Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Julian Kynaston. We start our conversation with some of Julian's working background because, whilst interesting in its own right, it gives some context as to how and why he does what he does today in the Menosphere. We get a little bit of a history of makeup as we know it today, and bear with me here because this is going somewhere important for all of us. It shows that Julian is a visionary, and he wants to bring menopause out of the darkness. If you don't know it already, he shares the truly heartbreaking story of David Salmon and his wife. And I will warn you that this is likely to upset some people deeply, but it's important to hear. Julian's words got me thinking because it's easy for those of us in this space to demand effective solutions for menopause. But what about the women who remain unaware? Carolyn Harris talked about them with me back in February 22, and there are still millions today who don't know what is happening to them, and some of them are frightened. Julian knows this, and he also knows that women need choice. So before we begin, here is a reminder about real menopause therapy, an opportunity to handpick your own therapist and match them to your specific needs, environment, and interests so you meet someone who understands the whole you. Go to bit.ly/RM therapy to discover more. That's bit.ly/RM therapy, capital R, capital M, capital T. I'll put a clickable link in the show notes to make it simple. Subscription is free, it's obligation free, so you've got nothing to lose. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, here's Julian. Julian, it is a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much for joining me today. Would you like to start by telling everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, your family, where you grew up, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that'd be a pleasure. So Julian Kynaston, Huddersfield born and bred, never really ventured far from that, albeit I tend to work in Leeds Central now. Parents, mum, housewife, father, fireman, brought up very much also by my grandparents, an engineer, again, housewife. I've got two sisters, quite younger than me. I'm now we're getting detailed now, I'm on third wife. Third wife, ooh, this is cathartic. Third wife, who's brought with her two wonderful children who've been with me since they were toddlers, so very much my own. One's at university doing incredibly well, and the other one doing well locally as a car salesman for Mini. So yeah, everything's great. I live on a farm in a rural village called Upper Denby, which has got its pros and cons. Its pros is we've got beautiful, my wife's into horses, so I've been able to get her on a farm with menage and some nice flat fields around us. The downside is it's fox hunting territory, and if you know anything about me, I openly fund the hunt saboteurs, so I'm very much anti-fox hunting, which gives me and leads me to some very interesting conversations in the local pubs. Say no more, I'm 6'4", I can handle those conversations.
I have been watching your work. I have sort of investigated your work over a period of time because I love it. So much of it visually is stunning, and I hope we've got time to get on to that. Otherwise, another time. There appears to be a thread through much of it as well, and it's theatrical and bold and really attention-grabbing. You've said yourself that one of your first companies, Illamasqua, was born from your love of subculture. So why makeup?
Okay, I had, prior to Illamasqua, I've got an ad agency, design consultancy. I mean, essentially, I suppose we're a very grown-up marketing strategy bods. Going back 15 years, Propaganda met three guys who owned GHD. And at the time, GHD, it certainly wasn't the leviathan of a brand it is today. It was facing up to the fact that 18 months after starting, 42 competitors launched against it in the space of 60 days. On one hand, you had Babyliss, all of the big giants, you know, the kind of L'Oreal Lauder type giants. And right on the other side at the 42, you got brands like Bang& Olufsen thinking, we'll do an iron. Caprice, the underwear model, licensed an iron. There was irons coming out of the woodwork everywhere. And I think their view was that that was going to signal to them a very quick end to their journey. They came to us, the rest's kind of history. We wrote a strategy that took them from, I think it was about 4.5 million under threat. And next year they did 18 million, the year after 36. They put me in as marketing director on the board to keep that going, which I did through to it being sold to LDC, a venture capital firm. And at that point there, GHD was sold, it went. We put our heart and soul into that brief. We felt like it was losing a limb for us. And rather than lose the team that I'd built to create that brand, I chose to go into business on another venture myself. So I challenged the market. I said, look, I've got a great team here. Why don't you bring me back a challenge? Tell me which market is unpenetrable. And I asked that of 3 people whose word I trust. All 3 came back, knocked on my door and said, makeup, cosmetics. You've got L'Oreal and Lauder at the top. You've got 2 small ones called Chanel and Vuitton at the bottom. They're all French. It's the biggest cartel you'll ever meet. We think to launch in that sector. You're perhaps talking 50 million, 25 years. I said, I'll do it in 5 years with 5 million. And then we had to create a makeup brand. And it was at that point I delved very much into my past as a teenager, having a love affair with the goth scene, bands like the Sisters of Mercy, and also the men on the scene, Adam Ant and Dave Vanian from The Damned, who wore makeup splendidly. And I think I wanted to create a makeup for all of those types of people, those subcultures that the big brands ignore. And that was very much the birth of Illamasqua. The opportunity that we spotted in the market was that I walked every single makeup hall, I think, in the UK. And every brand on there, from Bobbi Brown to MAC, very eager to tell you that it's professional makeup. But yet, when you ask the guys on counter what professional means, they can't really answer that question. And most of you are pointing in the direction of, well, Bobbi Brown's a makeup artist. That's probably the best answer you're going to get. And that confused me because I used to draw a parallel with motor racing and think, well, Michael Schumacher's a racing driver, but I really don't want him building the car. To me, professional makeup was always, in my mind's eye at least, going to be done in a chemistry lab with people in white coats and explosions going off and all this kind of stuff. So I researched into the origins of professional makeup, and there's a big void online, or there was, and it pointed you back to 1920s Berlin, when, with the onset of Hollywood, Berlin found itself under threat. And the actors who, up and until that point in Berlin, had done every facet of promoting a show. They'd done lights, they'd done costume, they'd done everything, including marketing, including makeup. They were told by a new professional strain of directors to bring in experts. And one of the briefs went out to makeup saying, we don't want makeup that melts under the hot lights. We want colours that are as visible from the back of the auditorium as the front. And if we're doing a Cleopatra, we want that particular chartreuse green to be bang on. We don't want to compromise. So it had to step up, and that's where chemists did come into the game. And it was 2 firms were born. One was called Leichner, and the other one was called Kryolan. I tried to buy Leichner, only to find Kryolan had subsequently bought Leichner. So I went to Kryolan. They were operated in Berlin, family firm, wonderful, wonderful people. And the 85-year-old owner, I sat with him and a translator, and I said, I know that you've never sold to the high street. I know that you only sell to TV companies, theatre companies, opera companies, and through your own professional store, which in the UK was and is in Covent Garden. But I said, would you allow me to take your recipes, your formulas, and allow me to contemporize the imagery around them, but for the first time ever give the public access to professional makeup? And he just went, through the translator, I'd be very proud of that. So I formed a partnership with Kryolan, and Illamasqua brought makeup to the consumer that had never been available to the consumer before. And we could therefore truly say this is professional makeup. So I think I entered that sector with a rigor at a product level that was incredible. And then I think instead of turning my back on those subcultures that had inspired me, I thought to myself at the time, I don't have the money to go into Vogue and into all the press, and that's where they get their 25 million from, by the way. But if I labour and slavishly through the internet, through the groups on the internet, get to bother about these small groups, then if you add a lot of small groups together, you'll get a big group. And I think if you give them imagery that they can relate to and appreciate, they'll be deeply loyal to that. And I think the other thing we had to do is to ultimately desexualize makeup. We had to go back to, because those subsectors do, those subcultures do, men wear makeup. In fact, I will say, because men have different skin and stubble, they know how to wear makeup far better than a woman knows how to wear. So we really paid homage to those people. We put them in our campaigns. We always had an equal amount of men to women. We didn't just stop there, though. We had 85-year-old women in that campaign. People who the L'Oreal and Lauder's had previously turned their backs on through campaigns, because they're a subculture.
Mm-hmm.
The minute the accountants at L'Oreal Towers decide that there's not enough money to be made, you're a subculture. You're off down an extreme. No one cares about you. So we just united all of them and gave them not just a product that was good, but we gave them imagery that they'd never seen before that they could relate to. And then we gave them a level of care and service so that 85-year-old woman on the floor at Selfridges, she'd forgotten what customer service looked like because people stopped asking her to stop and try a red lipstick when she was 50. We were not discriminating between her and a 20-year-old, and they were so grateful for that. But again, the word begins to spread on that front. So I think we got it right on many levels. And some people have said to me that we were so visionary with it and so ahead of our time that even stuff that we see unfold now is probably down to the change we made in that sector. And when we're talking about serving the market well, I had foundations that went from black to white. I didn't have a token couple of dark colours in. Mm-hmm. So again, when we see brands like Fenty joining the market, I think we inspired many people to come in and raise their game. So I'm deeply proud of what we did. And of course, in the end, it did get too big for our pockets. I'd brought Joe Corey in, which you'd asked about, I think. And Joe joined very much because we were kindred spirits. We were both punk rockers in our past. We both challenged convention instinctively. I think we are inherent natural brand builders. But I also needed some more deep pockets. And Joe just sold Agent Provocateur. He'd come out of that, wanted to go into makeup, seen what I'd done and thought, well, that's exactly how I'd have done it. So we got together on it and we took it again further than I could have done. And then in the end, we sold it to Hook Group up in Manchester. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was an incredible journey. And to see 3 years in, Vogue magazine saying it was the most significant event in makeup for 18 years, and 18 years hence was the arrival of MAC, you can't get much more of an accolade than that.
So how did you then discover, maybe that's the right word, maybe it's not, menopause? Do you see that almost as another subculture to bring to the fore?
I see it as a subculture in a sense that nobody cared about it and you had to dig deep to find it. You know, if you want information on a subculture, you've got to buy certain magazines, you've got to go into certain sites, you've got to go to certain clubs. It was a bit like that with menopause in some respects. So you draw an interesting parallel with us, with that term. I've never thought of it that way, but maybe. I mean, I think that first and foremost, it's important to understand how me and Gen M came about. Gen M got me interested in menopause. So Heather Jackson had started Gen M about 18 months prior with Sam Simister from Innocent Drinks. She was their new product development director. Heather had known me from when Heather was a young child, being brought into where I used to work by her dad, a guy called Ashley Jackson. And I'd seen Heather grow up. And Heather then gone on and been very successful in business. And in a meeting with Sam Simister, a chance meeting, I believe, they realised both of them were as confused about what was happening to their bodies as each other. They got a commonality from that conversation. And very quickly, probably over a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, decided to do something about it. She was going to find the right way to make a change. That's why she sought me out. She'd heard of my reputation and she'd known me from the past. And I said to her, first and foremost, I think that your job should be to drive change through brands. Brands, to my mind and in my world, own society. They own it and are as influential as politicians can't be. I'll get a dig in there. As politicians can't be. So, in my world, if you want to create a change at a consumer level, why not take an easier route and try and unite a number of brands to join you because they've already got those consumers. So the vision was that we were going to encourage brands to bring menopause out of the darkness. We were going to do that by offering them bespoke research to help inform their decision making, consumer decision making. We were going to stimulate that with awards. And ultimately speaking, we were going to give some form of accreditation to those brands that took the menopause seriously. We, at the time, thought about what criteria a brand should have. And I remember saying to them, well, look, let's not make the barrier in year one so high that no one meets it, because that will not help that woman and her husband and her family and her colleagues over there. Equally, let's make it a barrier for entry that's very intention driven. But to cut a long story short, from a business that was trying to found its feet, a year later, we have 20 staff, we have a turnover, we have won every award that we could possibly win in our sector. But most importantly, we've 80 big brands behind us now. And we are driving some significant change. So was that got me interested on an emotional level? No. What got me interested on an emotional level was meeting a gentleman called David Salmon. And I met him through Gen. I'd heard about a man in Keighley, local to me, whose wife had committed suicide. And she'd committed suicide. He didn't know at the time. I'll come back to that. But in the end, it was because of menopause. So David describes his relationship with his wife, Linda, as absolutely the perfect marriage, the perfect wife, the perfect mum, the perfect daughter. She was the life and soul of Sainsbury's, where she worked on the till. They did everything any couple would want. They didn't turn any mountains up, but they did beautifully what I call normal relationship. They were carers for Linda's mother, who lived, and they brought her in, I believe, opposite. So that's the level of goodness in the heart of these people, that they'd not run away from that problem. They lived directly opposite, and every day, twice a day, Linda went across the road to deal with her mum. And then all of a sudden she started not wanting to get out of bed. Other things affected their relationship, their personal relationship, but she changed very, very quickly. And he describes it as terrifying in so much as she'd no idea what was going wrong with her. And I think that his words were she probably thought she was going crazy as well. And it built up and it got worse, and she stopped bothering even with the food. And then one time she went across the road to deal with her mum, and she was laid back, and Linda was never laid back. And he went across to find her, and as he opened the door, she was hanging at the top of the steps. And then it was a year later when he switched on, I think it was Look North TV News, and there was a piece on menopause, and he listened to that and he cried and he went, she had that, she had that, she had that, she had that. And of course, then you jump straight to, if she'd known, she'd be here today. I sat with him, so I can say hand on heart, he believes that. Mm-hmm. He believes that. Now, this is why, to my mind, when people are being at this stage of the formation of this market, too up their own arse with criteria of product efficacy, or too much up their own arse with it should just default to HRT, let them go and sit with David Salmon. Because if she'd have been able to working at, let's say, Sainsbury's where she worked, if she'd have been able to just see on an aisle menopause, hot flashes, hot sweat, brain fog, yada, 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 she'd have been able to work it out for herself. So I am very, very philosophical that in the formation of this market, we first of all need to get 48 symptoms served by a number of 48 products, 10 in each 48. And the reason that I can flippantly say I'm not too bothered about whether all of them are wholly sincere in their actions is because in this day and age, they will not last 1 month on the shelf at Boots. They will not last 1 month online on Amazon. They will not be bought again if they don't work. They'll receive no to 1-star ratings on Amazon. So I think of the two routes, a high entry bar, which means that for every 50 products that could move forward, only 2 do. That means that Boots lose interest because there's no commerciality with it. I think will fail. I think what we need to do is get everybody thinking, let's get a menopause product out, then let the market judge them. Half will fall away, but let me tell you, half will stay. And I think for my wife has night sweats. They don't sound much, do they? But they're crazy. The bed is wet through. And of course, by the time she's got up, because it's awful to sleep in and come back to bed, it's freezing as well. Now that sweat regulation, if you want to go and buy a coat, a Gore-Tex coat, and if you want to buy a Gore-Tex coat for going to watch Barnsley at Stockport County away, you have a choice of 30 brands and about 50 different technical fabric types. My wife had to resort to somebody in Norway who was offering night wicking fabric for pyjamas. Can't be right, can it? So I think that we need those products. We need the market to self-regulate. We need choice. And my job has been to work with Gen M to say, we're here to inspire brands and manufacturers of product and retailers of product. Those are the 3 key parts to build a marketplace. And whilst ever there are 15.8 million women going through menopause in the UK every year, and there are only 2% of vegans in the UK, and the vegans have a devoted plant aisle at Marks and Spencer's, and there's nothing for menopause, then there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're trying to do. Now, this is where you get Mr. Kynaston excited, because at GHD, I wanted to fight brands coming in spending 30 million on telly and crushing this little brand called GHD that was first. At Illamasqua, I wanted to give a 2-finger salute to the accountants at L'Oreal Towers that said men shouldn't wear makeup. And at Gen M, I think I want to do right by 15.8 million women, and I want to help David Salmon, of which there will be many. It might not always be the husband, it might be the work colleague, it might be the daughter, the son. But I don't like injustices. I just don't like injustice. That's where I suppose I get my creative juices flowing.
That's such an interesting paradigm that you come from, that you're encouraging brands to create something, whether it works or not. Because a lot of us on the consumer side have been thinking, but there are hundreds of thousands of people in the world selling snake oil because they've jumped on the menopause bandwagon.
Yeah.
But if they drop off and the genuine ones come through, yes, it's up to us to sniff them out ultimately as the consumer.
Well, look, there's 2 things. There is, first of all, I'm very encouraged and buoyed now that the marketplace has got this meno washing and snake oil lobby, because it proves it's forming.
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying to Heather and Sam, don't worry about it, because it keeps the conversation live. It is part of a forming market. If we weren't making any noises, that lobby wouldn't be there. I don't think there are that many snake oil products. I think there are some, definitely some. And yes, the sooner they're out of the system, the better. But would I slow down the market to penalise those? No, I wouldn't. I'd rather speed it up to back the ones that are good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there was the Holland and Barrett chocolate menopause chocolate bar, wasn't there? And I think if you look at any dietitian, and lots of dietitians now coming into the menopause space, there's an ingredient in a dark chocolate apparently quite good for menopause. Look, what if it was that chocolate bar that David Salmon's wife happened to pick up, read, and look at, and then decide that she's going to do a bit more digging into menopause? I think we've got to be very careful what we wish for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are boundaries to it. There are kind of, if you think about the Earth's core, at the centre, you've got 10 out of 10 tick for efficacy. And at the outer shell, arguably, yeah, you've got brands. The sooner they're out, the better. And I detest those because they're opportunists. But in the middle, it's a bit grey. It is a little bit grey. And I don't see anything wrong with some of those outer layers being tenuous, so long as they help with the signposting of the overall journey.
With your meeting with David Salmon, with your wife having night sweats, and I do empathise with that, they are horrendous. You've written a beautiful poem all about menopause, and it had reactions from men and women alike, which was very encouraging. Everybody responded very positively to it. So from the male perspective, because some men find it easier to talk to other men about menopause, what do they come to you with? What do you find has troubled them the most in the conversations you've had with them?
So it has been a taboo subject for many people out there. This is a subject that's come in left field. There's no knowledge about it, and if there is any knowledge, it's limited to a drop off in sex drive, night sweats. What's the other cliche? Not
Hot
cliche, but it's
flashes.
there you go. So those three are probably at best what anybody knows about. Not just men either, but women.
Mhm.
So first and foremost, what I will say to any man that comes to me, and generally what they're saying is, how do I support my wife? What do I do? And I think, as I said in that poem, just conversation. Never has there been a truer word of a problem shared is a problem halved. I think when you're in menopause in a world that is where it is taboo, it's a lonely place, and therefore it's a very fearful place. So that we don't need to become rocket scientists, and we do not need to get hung up in the high science war of HRT versus no HRT. That's for very clever people. I don't count myself to be one of those. What you can do is you can care through talking about it. And as I say in there, sometimes just stopping, asking how she is, asking her what these things feel like, what the sensation is, how often do these things reoccur, jumping on the internet to find some solution, or just show willing, jump on the internet yourself and take a solution. I think that's all we need to do because we're at a base zero here. So I don't think the first gesture from man needs to, at this stage, be anything more than showing an interest, caring, and perhaps dabbling a bit deeper to learn about it themselves. And that was the challenge I set myself in that poem, which was to cover off all 48 symptoms. Whether you think there's 50 or 46 kind of doesn't matter, does it? The truth is, there's a lot more than three.
Oh my gosh, yes. And
Yeah.
some of them can be devastating.
Yeah. Well,
Obviously.
I saw the latest Meno washing accusation was about people then looking at the relationship of collagen in hair and nails. Collagen can strengthen hair, retain hair loss, and strengthen nails. Now, as we know, hair loss and the cracking of nails and weak nails are symptoms of menopause. What if you put those two symptoms into Google and they tell you you've got cancer? Now, perhaps that's what David Salmon's wife did. We'll never know. Now, I would rather have some product out there saying menopause shampoo containing collagen and also menopause taking collagen rather than strengthen nails. I don't see why there's any question over this. I do not see why there's any question over it. If we want to see snake oil, then go to the market that sells you kind of paracetamol and aspirin, where it tells you that this one's for the back of your neck, this pain's for your knee, that's for your hand, this is for your head, this is for your foot. I think we all know it's the same product in that pack, don't we?
The fact that menopause is a very individual experience for every woman, she might just find that the chocolate bar does have an effect. Maybe it's psychological, maybe there's something more to that. It might not work for everybody, but
Yeah.
this is what I found certainly with my cohort, with people I work with people I've interviewed, not all of the same things work for all of us. And we all have slightly different variations of the 48 to 72 different symptoms. So the more that is available, there is possibly that argument as well.
And you said something there which is placebo. I mean, I've always, way before Gen M, I have no problem with the word placebo. If you take something and it works, and somebody goes, haha, it was a placebo, then to be quite honest, haha them if I think it worked. You know, I have got no issue with that. What I do think is that we underestimate the fact that if that bar of chocolate just endorsed the fact that it was menopause that they were going through and they weren't going crazy, then again, in almost a placebo effect, it's worked again. And of course, it was only last week or the week before that the internet lit up, didn't it, with this nice report.
Yeah.
And the cognitive behavioural therapy people taking an absolute dosing off the lobbyists out there, the HRT. Now, I had panic attacks, and I had panic attacks for 10 years. They stopped me flying for 10 years. And I've had sertraline, I've had 3 different types of drug whose job it is to repair the serotonin bridge. I had hypnosis 6 months ago, and it worked more than anything. To me, that's a really close parallel.
Yeah.
I think it's really distasteful and really arrogant and really loaded to decry CBT therapy and the role it can play in menopause. And I think that it is shocking to put the HRT pressure on to the extent that they do when statistics show that a huge amount of women choose not to want it. That's it. Job said. That's enough. And that, again, I don't like people being told what to do. I don't believe a brand's job is to tell anybody what to do. A brand's job is to give them some choice. And HRT is a choice. CBT is a choice. Hypnotherapy is a choice. The aisle at Sainsbury's can become a choice. It's a choice. That's what women need, a choice. They do not need anything shoving down their necks at this time. So again, I came out in defence of that last week because I think that, yes, it's healthy, but this constant HRT lobby bangs against the statistics that are out there for people who want it.
There is no doubt that HRT for many women is a terrific solution and or part of the jigsaw puzzle.
No doubt at all.
However, there are women that cannot take it and, like you've just said, who choose not to take it. CBT could also be a fantastic part of the jigsaw puzzle. Will it help with every single symptom? No, probably not. But it can be of enormous benefit. I'm a huge fan of every kind of mental therapy, frankly, for adults, particularly menopausal people, because it can be so beneficial. So yes, I agree. I think the bashing of it is just uncalled for and frankly disrespectful.
Absolutely. And it was wrong. Black and white, it was wrong. They should apologise.
Do you also feel that men need some support during this time as well? If they are watching women either that they live with, so are married to, or maybe their sister or partner, or work with, their neighbor, the wonderful person who hands them coffee every morning, if they are finding that difficult or also finding it difficult to have a conversation, how can the rest of us help those men?
Again, I'm just really I only know how to be honest. I haven't given that. That's the question I struggle to answer. I just haven't given it much thought. Again, what I do know is when we get that aisle in all of the major retailers, on and offline, the men will be down the aisle as well. And they'll be looking at it and they will learn all they need to learn through that aisle, because by the time they started at one end and they started at the other, they'll probably have learned all 48 symptoms. The snake oil products really won't make it onto the aisles of the Sainsbury's and things, because that Gen MMT criteria is still pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
I think my point is it as tight as you could possibly be? It's not at the point of you've got to be 20 out of 20 to get in. It's probably you've got to be 15 out of 20. But I'll tell you what, in 3 years, it'll be 20 out of 20. But we've got to, first of all, get the products in play, haven't we? And when the products are in play, we can move it from there.
I love what Sam and Heather have been doing. They were early guests on the show, so have been hugely supportive. And the fact that they're growing and bringing awareness all over the world into different areas is just wonderful. Finally, then, Julian, if there is anyone who is curious to learn more about menopause, what would you suggest is their approach?
I mean, I don't want to be too partisan to Gen M, but Gen M's a good site as any. And then, of course, there's people like yourselves out there and a good number of others. All have got a good heart in this game, but we're trying to do and investing in lots of time and passion. So, internet's fantastic. I would put you on that list, even if it wasn't you I were talking to. So there you go. But yeah, Gen M, yourself, and an handful of others. I certainly wouldn't start with some of those books that are on the shelves right now at the highest level, because I think that is simply started on the HRT side, and I'd encourage people to start seeing that as part of the solution, not the solution. And talking about it as well, it is really interesting. I mean, it's not exactly a boring subject to get into. It's crazy, and I make it quite sexy for people because I'll say, "Can you imagine how many women were hung as witches?"
Yes.
Seriously, for menopausal symptoms. And I think that's where you can really shock a conversation down your local boozer into pricking their ears up, because it's true.
It all makes perfect sense.
You know?
It tracks when you look back at history. Ducking stool, burnt at the stake, and how old are they and what were they doing? And yeah, absolutely. And if they did float, oh, thank goodness for that. Lovely. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Where can people find you and your offerings on menopause and, of course, Gen M?
All my films that I've done, and there's lots now, isn't there? They're all on my LinkedIn profile. So Julian Kynaston, you'll find me there. I'd steer clear of me on Facebook because I just wind up fox hunters and just don't go there. I just warn anybody off Facebook and me. It's too political. LinkedIn's my decent forum. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Julian very kindly sent me a recording of his poem, so here it is.
Men, chaps, pals, let's explore a plight, a journey through menopause, right? Gather round, lend an ear, and I'm going to educate you on a topic that for 15.5 million women a year causes real fear. Hot flashes, perhaps to you and I the most renounced symptom of all. Tides of heat engulf a human firewall. Drenched in sweat, it's an absolute pain, but it's just one of 48 symptoms in nature's cruel game. Insomnia strikes with its relentless rain, sleepless nights, cruel pain, tossing, turning, searching for sleep, wide-eyed forever counting sheep. Mood swings, a dance so grand, from laughter to tears, it's a shifting sand, happy one moment, then engulfed by gloom, a seemingly endless sense of doom. Let's not forget the weight gain, a few extra pounds, the scale takes the strain. The struggle is real, but let's maintain grace, for a kind word can light up this darkened space. Headaches and migraines, a pounding drum roll, temples throbbing, feelings of lost control. But fear not, remedies can be found. Hold her hand, breathe with her, help bring her around. Next up, memory lapses, they come from nowhere. Forgetting names, keys, utter despair. But take heart in knowing it's just a phase. Maybe it's a chance to embrace new ways. Joint pain and dryness down there. Vaginal discomfort, that isn't fair. Urinary issues, to the bathroom she runs. Perverse really, what nature calls fun. Dizziness, fatigue and skin that feels dry. Changes in vision makes her want to cry. Hair loss, acne, breasts like balloons. On this journey, body transformations loom. Non-existent libido that feels so cruel. Confidence lost, she feels like a fool. Affected smell and taste adding to her plight. Let's stand together, chaps, join in her fight. Palpitations, joint pain, dry mouth too. bloating, feeling cold, to name but a few, digestive dilemmas in so many ways, but humour and laughter can brighten even her darkest days. Depression and anxiety, like shadows cast, but counselling and support, they'll help until it's past. So, dear gentlemen, as this journey unfolds, remember, knowledge empowers, so listen, be told. Body odour and bleeding gums, the list never ends. Their bodies feel broken, unable to mend. No longer as fertile as many in their youth, we need to stand tall and listen to their truth. The pins and the needles, the burning mouth, some days feeling confined to the house, the thinning nails and mean PMS. The days are tough, we hear her confess. Motivation can get lost on foggier days. Her body doesn't feel like her own in so many ways. The struggle to concentrate is frightening. She just wants to feel normal again. Menopause is a natural phase of grace. Let's educate ourselves and do it at pace. Stand tall, my friends. Stand at her side. Navigate the symptoms, all 48, with dignity and with pride.
And a final reminder about Real Menopause Therapy, the opportunity to handpick your own therapist, whether it's talking therapy, CBT, or any other kind of therapy. You get to match them to your unique needs, environment, and interests, so you meet someone who gets the whole you. Go to bit.ly/RM therapy. That's bit.ly/RM therapy, capital R, capital M, capital T. I'll put a clickable link in the show notes to make it as simple as possible. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.